I sat in the dark, the dim hum of the streetlights outside casting faint patterns on the kitchen wall. My whiskey glass, half full, glimmered under the weak glow of the stove's nightlight. The scent of her perfume lingered in the air, an unrelenting reminder of the evening's humiliation. It clung to my skin like guilt, though it wasn't mine to bear. The night had unraveled so fast. One moment we were laughing with friends at the bar, her hand brushing against mine in those fleeting moments of affection she still allowed herself to show. The next, she was tossing her head back in exaggerated laughter at his joke. The guy I never quite trusted, Ethan. The charmer. The life of every party. And then, with the subtlety of a wrecking ball, she turned to me and said it. You could learn a thing or two from Ethan, you know. He knows how to make a woman feel alive. The laughter died down. An icy silence fell over the group, save for Ethan's nervous chuckle and her nonchalant sip of wine. My face burned not just from her words but from the pity in the other's eyes. She didn't even flinch, like shaming me was as natural as breathing. I walked out before I could say something I'd regret. She didn't follow. An hour later, the phone buzzed. Her name lit up the screen. My stomach clenched as I stared at it. A part of me didn't want to answer, but curiosity or maybe masochism got the better of me. Hello, my voice came out hoarse. Hey, her tone was light, almost playful. Are you okay? Do you know I love you, right? For a moment, I couldn't speak. The audacity of it hit me like a freight train. Love. The word felt foreign, like something fragile that had been shattered and carelessly glued back together. I finally managed, my voice low and dangerous, because it sure didn't seem like it tonight. She sighed, the kind of sigh that made it clear she thought I was overreacting. Oh, come on, don't be so sensitive. It was just a joke. A joke. My grip tightened around the phone. You humiliate me in front of everyone, and I'm supposed to laugh it off. Ethan is just a friend, she said, her voice dripping with feigned innocence. You're reading too much into this. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. But there was something in her tone, a subtle defiance, that ate at me. I pictured her now, sitting in her car, or maybe at home, her lips curled in that sly, knowing smile she used when she thought she'd won. Where are you? I asked, the question tumbling out before I could stop it. There was a pause. What does it matter? It matters because I'm your husband, I snapped, and I want to know why the hell you're calling me like nothing happened. Another pause, this one longer. When she spoke again, her voice was softer, almost tender. I called because I care about you. I don't want you to think I don't. A bitter laugh escaped me. You have a funny way of showing it. For a moment, the line went silent. I thought she might have hung up, but then I heard a muffled sound, like someone whispering in the background. My chest tightened. Who's with you? I demanded. No one, she said quickly, too quickly. I'm alone. I didn't believe her. Not for a second. The sound came again, clearer this time, a man's voice, low and indistinct but undeniably there. Don't lie to me, I said, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and dread. Who the hell is with you? She didn't answer. Is it Ethan? I asked, the words slicing through the silence like a knife. Why do you always do this? She shot back, her voice sharp now, defensive. Why do you always assume the worst? Because you give me every reason to, I shouted, the dam finally breaking. You humiliate me in front of our friends, you disappear without a word, and now you're lying to me. What am I supposed to think? She didn't respond. The silence stretched on, heavy and suffocating. I could hear my own breathing, ragged and uneven, as I waited for her to say something, anything that might make sense of this. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't mean for it to happen. The room seemed to tilt, the walls closing in around me. What didn't you mean? I asked, though I already knew. I need to go, she said, her voice trembling now. No, I said firmly, you're not running away from this. Tell me the truth. Is it him? Are you sleeping with him? She didn't answer. She didn't have to. The silence was answer enough. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, my hands shaking, the weight of her betrayal settling over me like a dark, suffocating cloud. The whiskey glass shattered against the wall. The phone slipped from my hand and clattered onto the table. My pulse thundered in my ears, drowning out the distant noise of cars outside. The rage building inside me wasn't the hot, fleeting kind. It was cold, sharp, and precise, like a blade being honed to perfection. I grabbed my jacket and keys. If Ethan thought he could laugh at me, humiliate me, and then slink away in the dark with my wife, he was sorely mistaken. My knuckles whitened around the steering wheel as I drove. I didn't know where I was going at first, but instinct guided me to her favorite place. His favorite place. The little dive bar where she'd first introduced him as just a friend. The parking lot was half empty, the neon sign above the door casting flickering light on the wet asphalt. And there it was, her car, parked neatly in the corner. My breath hitched as I spotted Ethan's truck next to it. I killed the engine and stepped out, my breath fogging in the cold night air. My hand brushed against the tire iron I kept under the seat, but I left it. No, I wanted this to be personal. Inside, the smell of stale beer and cigarettes hit me like a wall. The bar was mostly empty, save for the bartender wiping down glasses and a couple whispering in a corner. And then I saw them, at a back booth half hidden by shadows. Her laugh carried over the low hum of the jukebox. She looked up first, her smile faltering as her eyes met mine. Ethan followed her gaze, his expression shifting from surprise to something that almost resembled pity. That look set my blood on fire. "Hey man," Ethan said, holding up a hand as if we were old friends. "Listen, this isn't what it looks like." "Get up," I said, my voice low but laced with enough venom to make him hesitate. He glanced at her, then back at me. "Look, I think you need to calm down." I didn't let him finish. My fist connected with his jaw, the force sending him sprawling against the booth. The bartender yelled something, but I didn't care. All I saw was Ethan clutching his face, blood trickling from his lip as he scrambled to his feet. "Are you crazy?" he shouted, holding up his hands defensively. You think you can humiliate me?" I growled, advancing on him. "In front of my friends, my wife, you think I'd just sit back and let it happen?" "Stop it," she screamed, grabbing my arm. I shook her off, barely registering her presence. Ethan swung at me a wild, clumsy punch. I dodged it easily and drove my fist into his stomach, doubling him over. He stumbled back, crashing into a table. The bartender was yelling now, threatening to call the police, but I didn't care. "Please, stop," she cried again, trying to step between us. I glared at her, my chest heaving. "You don't get to ask me for anything, not after this." She recoiled as if I'd struck her, tears streaming down her face. Ethan groaned, struggling to his feet. He grabbed a beer bottle from the table, swinging it at me wildly. I ducked, the glass shattering against the wall behind me. Before he could react, I tackled him, driving us both to the ground. "You think you're better than me?" I hissed, pinning him down. "You think you can take what's mine?" "Please," he choked out, blood smeared across his face. It wasn't like that. I grabbed his shirt, lifting him slightly before slamming him back down. "Don't lie to me." "Stop," she screamed again, pulling at my shoulder. "You're going to kill him." I froze, my knuckles inches from his face. The weight of her words hung in the air, cutting through the haze of rage. Slowly, I released him, standing up and stepping back. Ethan lay there groaning, his chest rising and falling unevenly. She rushed to his side, cradling his head in her lap. The sight of it made my stomach turn. "You made your choice," I said, my voice cold and steady. "Don't come crawling back when he disappoints you." I turned and walked out, ignoring the stares of the bartender and the couple in the corner. Outside, the cold air bit at my skin, but it felt good, cleansing. The sound of sirens in the distance reminded me I didn't have much time. I got in my car, started the engine, and drove off, leaving her and Ethan to deal with the aftermath. They deserved each other. The drive home was a blur, my knuckles aching and stained with Ethan's blood. The satisfaction of watching him crumble under my fist was fleeting, like a spark that fizzled out too quickly. I didn't just want him hurt, I wanted him destroyed. And her. She'd made her bed now, she'd burn in it. When I got home, I poured the whiskey straight into the sink. It wasn't enough to drown the rage. Instead, I opened the laptop. My fingers hovered over the keys for a moment before I started typing, the plan taking shape in real time. It wasn't enough to just expose her. I wanted their lives ruined. The first step was easy. Every text she'd ever sent me, every photo she'd ever shared, it was all archived. I compiled it into a neat folder, labeled it for everyone to see, and uploaded it to a secure cloud. The real genius was in the framing. I wasn't going to look like the bitter husband I'd play the victim, because I was. Then I turned to Ethan. A little digging on social media revealed everything I needed to know: his cushy corporate job at an up-and-coming tech firm, his spotless reputation as a stand-up guy. Too spotless. A few late-night emails to his competitors, complete with doctored leaks of his supposed dirty dealings, would change that. The anonymous tip lines for corporate misconduct would ensure his bosses took notice. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. The real weapon was in the details. Ethan loved to flaunt his charm, his good looks, his network of connections. He thrived on being admired. So I crafted a different kind of scandal, one involving fake profiles, salacious rumors, and just enough plausible evidence to make it stick. By the time I was done, anyone who Googled his name would find a web of accusations about workplace harassment and shady deals. I leaned back in my chair, the glow of the screen illuminating the storm brewing in my mind. It was all set to detonate with one push of a button. The next day, I went to work like nothing was wrong. I played the role of the calm, collected husband. Poor guy, he's handling it so well. My co-workers had all heard about the scene at the bar. Word travels fast in small circles. I let their pity wash over me. It would only make the fallout sweeter. By midday, the first cracks started to show. My phone buzzed with a notification. An anonymous email forwarded to the entire staff at Ethan's company. A link to a private blog detailing his supposed indiscretions had gone live. It wasn't long before the comments rolled in, some defending him, most condemning him. I smiled as I imagined him in his corner office, staring at his screen, his perfect little world crumbling around him. That evening I drove by his place. The truck was parked outside, but her car was gone. Maybe she was trying to distance herself already. Coward. I parked a block away and watched the house from the shadows. The lights inside flickered on and off, his silhouette pacing back and forth. He didn't notice me when I slipped through the back gate. Didn't hear the soft scrape of my shoes on the patio. His laptop was sitting on the kitchen, the screen unlocked with barely an effort, too easy. I inserted a flash drive, transferring everything in a matter of seconds: work files, personal photos, private chats. It was all mine now. By the time Ethan walked into the kitchen, I was already gone. And the next phase moved faster than I anticipated. Within 2 days, Ethan had been suspended from his job, pending an investigation. The rumors spread beyond his company, seeping into every corner of his life. His LinkedIn profile was bombarded with questions and accusations. His social media accounts went dark. And then there was her. I heard through a mutual friend that she tried to call me. I didn't pick up, not yet. She'd moved out of our house and was staying with her sister, no doubt trying to figure out why everything was spiraling so quickly. The final blow came a week later. I scheduled an anonymous drop-off at her sister's house, a USB drive containing everything. Her messages to Ethan, photos of their nights together, recordings of her laughing about me behind my back. Her family deserved to know the truth. That night she called me. Her voice was shaking. "What the hell is wrong with you?" she screamed. "Do you know what you've done?" "I've done what you never had the courage to do," I replied coldly. I told the truth. "You ruined his life," she sobbed, "and you ruined mine." I stayed calm. "The difference is you had a choice. I didn't." The line went silent, save for her ragged breathing, the sound of someone realizing just how thoroughly they'd been outplayed. "You think this makes you better than us," she finally said, her voice breaking. "It doesn't. You're just as twisted as we are." "Maybe," I said, a faint smile tugging at my lips, "but at least I'm the one who won." And then I hung up. After the call, I stared at the phone in my hand, her words echoing in my mind. She tried to make it sound like I was no better than them, as though her betrayal and Ethan's smug arrogance were on equal footing with my calculated justice. Yet he hardened my resolve. She thought she could escape the storm by hiding behind her family, seeking solace in their support. Fine. I'd make sure that Sanctuary went up in flames too. The first step was learning more about her sister, Rachel. She'd always been the golden child of their family, a career-driven, self-righteous woman who looked down on me since day one. She called me boring, a man with no ambition, the perfect ally for my wife to lean on while playing the victim. I started with Rachel's social media. People like her were always sloppy, too enamored with their own image to realize how much they revealed. Within hours, I had everything I needed: her workplace, her friends, and most importantly, her secrets. A few old posts and tagged photos hinted at a relationship with a married co-worker. She'd deleted most of it, but the internet never forgets. From there, I moved fast. I created an anonymous account and sent a message to her company's HR department, complete with screenshots of her texts and photos with her married lover. I fabricated an email chain suggesting the affair had led to preferential treatment. The narrative was easy to spin, the pieces were already there. Next, I turned my attention to their parents. Her father, a man quick to judge me, owned a small chain of businesses. He'd always thought his daughter had married beneath her, making no secret of his disdain. I decided to hit him where it hurt. A few calls to local health departments and some anonymous tips about unethical practices at his restaurants were enough to set things in motion. Health inspectors arrived within days, and I made sure they found what they were looking for. A little digging revealed one of his managers had been lax with inventory, cutting corners on food safety. It only took slipping a few damning photos into the right hands. The news spread quickly: violations, fines, temporary closures. His reputation, carefully built over decades, was suddenly in freefall. By the end of the week, her family was reeling. Rachel had been placed on administrative leave, pending an investigation. Her father's businesses were in shambles, and her mother, the sweet, doting woman who always turned a blind eye to her daughter's flaws. I sent her an anonymous letter, detailing exactly what her darling youngest daughter had been up to. Every sordid detail. It wasn't cruel, it was the truth. She deserved to know the kind of person she'd raised. I heard through mutual acquaintances that the family was in chaos. Rachel confronted my wife, blaming her for dragging her into the mess. Their father was furious, his booming voice reportedly shaking the walls of their family home. And their mother. She'd broken down in tears, pleading with everyone to fix this. It wasn't long before my wife called me again. This time there was no anger, no bravado, just desperation. "Why are you doing this?" she begged, her voice raw and broken. "They didn't do anything to you." "They enabled you," I said coldly. "Every time they looked the other way, every time they justified your behavior, they became complicit. Now they're paying for it." "They're my family," she cried. "And what was I?" I snapped, my voice cutting through her sobs. "I was your husband, but you didn't care about that when you were with Ethan, did you?" She fell silent, the weight of her guilt pressing down on her. I could almost hear the gears turning in her mind, trying to find some way to make me the villain. "You've gone too far," she said finally, her voice trembling. "You're sick." "Maybe," I replied, "but at least I'm honest about it." I ended the call without another word, leaving her to stew in the ruins of her life. Let her see what it felt like to have everything she cared about torn away. In the days that followed, I heard bits and pieces about their unraveling lives. Attempts to clean up the mess began almost immediately. Rachel hired a lawyer, desperate to salvage her career. Her father scrambled to smooth things over with the health department. But it was too late, the damage was done. I could have stopped there. But why should I? They'd stood by her side when she betrayed me, laughed at her little jokes, and treated me like I didn't matter. They deserved everything they got. And as for her, she was all alone now, trapped in the wreckage of her own making. She thought she could hurt me and walk away unscathed. She thought wrong. The aftermath of my revenge unfolded like a perfectly scripted tragedy. My wife's carefully constructed world had been reduced to ashes. Her family splintered under the weight of scandal and betrayal. Ethan vanished from the social scene, his career obliterated, his reputation irreparably tarnished. It should have felt like victory, a triumphant, satisfying end. But it didn't. The call came late one night, a week after her family collapsed. I almost didn't answer, but something compelled me to pick up. "Hello," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "It's me," she said softly. Her voice was fragile, barely above a whisper. "Please, don't hang up." I didn't respond, letting the silence stretch. I wanted her to feel the weight of it. "I don't know what to do anymore," she continued, her words tumbling out as if she was struggling to hold herself together. "I've lost everything: my family, my friends, my dignity." "That's not my problem," I said coldly. She sniffled, the sound crackling through the line. "I know I deserve this. I know I hurt you. and I'll never forgive myself for it. But I'm begging you, please stop. I can't take anymore. Her voice wavered, the raw vulnerability cutting through my defenses for a moment. I felt something, a flicker of the love we'd once shared. But it was gone as quickly as it came, drowned by the memory of her betrayal. Why should I asked, my tone icy. You didn't think twice about me when you were screwing Ethan. You didn't care how I felt when you humiliated me in front of everyone. So why should I care about you now? Her sobs grew louder, more desperate. Because I'm still human. Because I made a lot of mistakes. But you're not the man I thought you were. You've turned into a monster. I laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. A monster. You created this monster. You had a choice, and you chose to destroy me. Now you're reaping what you sowed. I loved you, she whispered, her voice breaking. No, I said firmly. You loved the idea of me. You loved having someone to fall back on when your games got boring. That's not love, that's convenience. She didn't respond. The silence on the other end was deafening, and for a moment I wondered if she'd hung up. But then she spoke again, her voice hollow. What do you want from me? An apology? My soul? Take it, just stop. I leaned back in my chair, the weight of her words settling over me. I'd already won, hadn't I? She was broken, defeated, left to pick up the pieces of a life she'd shattered with her own hands. But the victory felt hollow now. The rage that had fueled me for so long was flickering out. Do you know what I want? I said after a long pause. I want you to live with this. I want you to wake up every morning and feel the emptiness you left in my chest. I want you to see the wreckage of your life and know that you caused it. She sobbed quietly on the other end, her pain spilling out like a wound torn open. I closed my eyes, the weight of my words hanging in the air. But I'm done, I continued, my voice softening slightly. I've made my point. You're free to crawl back into whatever hole you can find. Just don't ever come near me again. I hung up before she could respond, the finality of it sinking in like a stone dropped into deep water. The days that followed were quiet. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she'd moved out of town, leaving behind the wreckage of her reputation. Her family was still fractured, struggling to recover from the fallout. And Ethan, no one had seen him since his life imploded. As for me, I found a strange peace in the aftermath. The rage that had consumed me for so long was gone, leaving behind a void. But it wasn't the painful emptiness I'd feared. It was something quieter and calmer, freedom. I wasn't the same man I'd been before she betrayed me. I wasn't sure if I liked the man I'd become. But one thing was certain, I'd taken back control of my life. And no one would ever take it from me again.